Hey there, this is Dennis Anyone with Dennis Hensley. It's a podcast about making things up and making things happen. I love talking to creative people, but I'm not doing that today because it is the 10th anniversary of Dennis Anyone, and we're going to do something special and a little bit different. So I can't believe it's been 10 years since I started this podcast in 2014, and it grew out of the Comedy Couch podcast that I had been doing since 2009, and a lot of those episodes are still in the feed, so it goes back a ways. And I was trying to think of something I could do that was different. Is it a clip show, or do I go back? And I'm not sure what to do. So I was talking it over with my friend Robert Chandler, who is a past podcast guest. He directed the documentary Dirty Sexy Comics about sexy gay comics. And we're actually friends because of this podcast, pretty much. And we got to know each other over the last few years. And whenever I see him, he always brings up a guest that I had on the podcast or just talks about it generally, and he really gets what I'm trying to do, and I really appreciate that so much. So I'm talking to him, and I'm like, what should I do for the 10th anniversary? And he goes, I think you should be interviewed. And I was like, all right, you want to do it? And so that's what we did. So I got interviewed in my home by Robert Chandler, and he really put a lot of thought and care into it, which really moved me a lot. We had a lot of fun. Some interesting things came up. And yes, of course I cried. I do. And we talked for quite a while, so I'm probably going to make this a two-parter. But I want to thank Robert for his care and for all the kind words he's said to me over the years about the podcast. And the truth is, I went back and it's 410 episodes. And the first thought I thought was, wow, that was a lot of work. But the truth is, it never felt like work. I don't look at those numbers and think, gosh, that was hard. It was always a pleasure. Every part of it, except for writing the synopsises. I don't like that part. But it was always a pleasure. It doesn't feel like, it never felt like work, which is good because I didn't get paid for most of it. But it's one of my happy places doing this podcast. So thank you to everyone that's listened, and I hope you enjoy this 10th anniversary interview. But before we get to that, I want to remind you that there are two ways you can support Dennis Anyone, because it's brought to you by me. I pretty much do it. No big sponsors. And one of those ways is you can go to DennisAnyone.net and leave a tip in my virtual tip jar. It helps me cover my expenses. And I got a tip this week from a listener named Happy Jack, who I know that name from back in the Sirius XM OutQ days when I would guest host for Frank DeCaro and Derek and Romaine, and Happy Jack would call in, and I was I always remembered Happy Jack because he was always a fun caller. And I got this wonderful message from him with a tip, and I'll just read a little bit of it. I've been smitten by you. Oh, wow, I just started with that part. Since your first appearance on Derek and Romaine, and I never miss an episode of Dennis Anyone. I purchased several of your books, your guests' books and products, plus your You Don't Know My Life game. See, the support means a lot. I was at ASU, that's where I went to college, and he put gay SU in parentheses, several years ahead of you. I had tons of fun there with my sexual awakening. Dude, maybe I should have asked him if I should read this beforehand, but this was in the pre-HIV AIDS era of 1980. He goes, first of all, man, you were doing ASU right. I didn't catch a clue until a little after that from my own journey, but I'm glad it was gay SU for you. It was gay questioning ASU for me. Anyway, he also writes, I get emotional when you audibly well up connecting to your guests. Well, get ready, because here we go. I am really, it's a very raw, emotional time for me for some reason. Maybe it's my age or things I'm going through or whatever. But it's not all bad emotions. Some of it's really good emotions, but it's just right on the surface. I'm not sure what that's about. I hope these coins in your virtual tip jar are helpful to you, and happy anniversary to Dennis Anyone. I adore you. Kissing you with my Dr. Kiss Lip Balm. Also, past podcast guest, Dr. Kiss Lip Balm. Sincerely, Happy Jack. So thank you so much. I'm not lying when it said it made my day and my week. I think I was kind of in a blue mood. I think I had just done my taxes, and you know how that can be. And I was like, what is going on? And I get this thing in my inbox, and it was that wonderful note and a generous tip, and it really made my day. And so I really appreciate it. Oh, and the other thing you can do if you're interested in supporting the show is you could become a subscriber to DNR Studios. I'm part of the Derek and Romaine family, and for a monthly fee, you get my show early, and you get all these other great gay shows. So check that out. at dnrstudios.com. All right, that's enough for the intros. Here now is the interview with me, conducted by my friend Robert Chandler. All right, we are rolling. I am here with Robert Chandler, and I'm just going to let him do it.
Wow.
Take it away. There it is.
Wow. It's amazing to be able to be at the controls of Dennis Anyone. But thank you for letting me do this. It's really an honor. I've told you before, Dennis Anyone is a bright spot in my week. I always add it to the end of my podcast queue on the weekend because I want to be left with the warmth, the positivity, and the inspiration I find in your show.
So it's the last one you listen to in your weekend podcast?
It's a taste I want to linger in my podcasting menu.
I love that.
For me, it feels like you're inviting your listeners to brunch to introduce them to someone you're sure they'd hit it off with and find fascinating.
That's sweet.
Your instincts are always great on that.
Thank you.
You have wonderful guests, the most fierce and fascinating people.
Thank you.
You also have the skill to bring out the essence of who they are. People feel comfortable opening up with you, and that really makes the podcast special.
That's so thoughtful. Can you see why I asked Robert to do this? Well, actually, he suggested the idea, but he's very thoughtful about what he gets from the podcast. And when he expresses it to me, I'm like, oh yeah, that's what I meant to do. That's what I'm trying to do. And so it's meaningful that you get what I'm going for in terms of the things we talk about and the kinds of people I like to feature.
And I'm definitely a listener. I've seen so many plays and watched so many movies and read so many books because I've heard about them on your show.
That means a lot to me because sometimes I my numbers are not, I'm not Pivot. I'm not, Mark Maron or some of those. So I'm always happy when people say they bought something or they got the Dr. Kiss lip balm for Christmas. That means a lot to me.
Well, yeah, I mean, like, whatever your numbers are, I definitely know you have an impact on people because you have an impact on me. Over the 10 years, you've given your listeners like me so many stories, smiles, and laughs.
Wow.
And yep, we've gotten weepy right along with you.
I cry all the time now. I think it's this age I'm at. I'm going to be 60 this year. And I think there's some kind of hormonal thing. My emotions are right at the surface. And so I may cry during this interview, possibly. But if I don't be bummed.
I know. If you don't, I'm going to feel like I've totally failed. So
maybe it's weirder. It might be weird doing this in person, which we never do. I always do Zoom pretty much since the pandemic. So this is an interesting. I've only done one other interview in person since the pandemic with an adult film star named Joel Someone. He's also like a performer and like a fun guy and a porntrepreneur. And he was like, no, we had to do it in person. And so we did. So there's that. So we have 2 dogs on the couch, a cat running around. And
it's a barn. It's a farm here.
It's really like Enzo likes to do watch my hosting. And when I host virtual games, he's like there monitoring. Like I'll finish and he'll be like, not your best. No, he's good. But he likes to be part of the action. So, yeah.
Well, before we get to the questions, I just want to thank you for 10 years of Dennis Anyone. It's meant a lot to me.
That means a lot to me. That means so much to me, actually. I can't believe it's been 10 years. And I was doing the math in my head and I went on the thing. 410 episodes.
Wow.
410 episodes of Dennis Anyone. And I was looking through all the lists, and there's names. I'm like, I don't know who that is. I can't remember who that is. And then I'll look it up, and I'm like, oh, that's that guy that made that thing or whatever. Yeah. So I'm sure that happens to Terry Gross. She forgets people. It must happen. No, but yeah, I kind of can't believe it. 410 episodes.
Yeah, it's an amazing accomplishment. Something to be proud of.
Thank you.
Ready for the questions?
Let's do it. So he has a list on an iPad, on a tablet. So I'm excited. The font is nice. I haven't seen them. So let's do it.
You've been a dancer, novelist, reality star. Let me start over. You've been a dancer, a novelist, a reality show star, television writer, journalist, game creator, game show host, and the reason why we're here, a podcaster. So congratulations on that and all those other achievements.
I forgot about the reality show thing.
You forgot about being on a reality show?
I forget that I was on the first season of Kathy Griffin, My Life on the D-List. I kind of forget about that. Not because it was bad or anything. I just kind of forget that it was the thing that happened.
You had Mexican food at Chevy's in Burbank on TV on Bravo.
And yeah, we would go to Chevy's anyway. Some people say Chevy's, some people say Chevy's. For a while, I wanted to date El Machino. That's the tortilla machine maker. And so when they started doing the reality show, we would go there. And this was pretty early days in terms of those shows. So it was not a lot scripted. Like, we didn't really fake anything or anything, and they would just film us, and we did it. We didn't get paid anything, but for a brief shining moment, I was a Bravo-lebrity.
You're one of the first generation of Bravo-lebrities.
I guess so. But it was strange to be in that kind of a project. But yeah, people saw it. It went on to win Emmys and all that stuff. But I was only in season 1, so.
Did you ever get your wine label launched off of that?
No, I did not. I'm not Skinny Girl Margaritas. No, I did not. Do you want to hear my favorite story about my life in the D-List?
Well, you know I do.
So, it's just kind of funny. It's after the first season had been shot, but right as it was airing, Tony and Kathy, Tony, my roommate at the time, and the other guy on the show with us, we were called the main gays, which I have mixed feelings about because it kind of stuck, but it's like, are we a purse? Anyway, they had a falling out, and I ended up also sort of stepping away from that world, Kathy's world. And a few months later, she was doing a benefit auction where you could go to see Celine Dion in Las Vegas, and you could go with Kathy and her gays. And that was the bid. And one of my friends who knew the whole story emailed and said, is it Dennis and Tony from the show? And somebody wrote back, no, it's not, but they're other gays and they're wonderful too. Like, it was sort of like, as long as we've got a gay is a gay is a gay. You cut one off and another one grows back in its place. But yeah, that was funny to me.
You became an ex-gay.
I became an ex-gay and a not so main gay. But yeah, that was an experience for sure.
It's fun It's always fun hearing stories about Kathy Griffin because she's so good at telling stories about the people that come into her life.
Yeah, and I follow her online, and she makes me laugh, and she's been through so much with the Trump thing and all of that. So,
oh my God,
if she walked in right now, I'd be very warm and friendly with her. But
that's really sweet.
I can't believe it was almost 20 years ago that
wow
was happening. Yeah,
I've always been timid about asking you about what happened to Kathy because I mean, some of these things can be emotional, and I know that you were close. So it's nice to hear that there's good feelings that linger.
Yeah, I think so. I think it's, overall, at the time it was stressful and hard to navigate. But now it's fine. It's all good.
It's nice to hear.
Yeah. I do want her to dance on Trump's grave at some point.
Yeah, she went through crap. I mean, she really sacrificed.
And the Anderson Cooper of it all makes me like. We were also it was so early days in the Trump administration that we were trying to kind of, I don't know, give him some respect, and it was ridiculous.
People turned on her quickly.
Yeah, kind of like crazy.
I mean, Andy Cohen, Anderson Cooper, they turned on her quickly. CNN with New Year's. Yeah. I've seen her show since then. Yeah. She's using it. She's making it work. Yeah. She's, what doesn't kill her makes her stronger.
For sure. Yeah. So
let me start by paraphrasing a question that you end most of your interviews with. Why do you podcast?
I do it because it makes me feel connected to people. I feel like getting to interview somebody is like such a golden opportunity. You get to ask them questions and they will answer. I find that like there are some people that have interviewing as part of their jobs and they're not that into it. You could tell they're not that into it. Some talk show hosts are like, I don't want to interview this starlet. I'll do it. Like, I don't know. I love the exercise of it. And I really feel like everybody, whether they're well-known person or a creative person or just anybody, everybody has gold in them that would be enriching to hear if you can prospect for it. So I do kind of find it like a sport, and I get a rush when a question brings up something or brings up an authentic moment or a funny story or somebody says, oh, no one's ever asked me that before. I kind of get a rush from it. I think of it as like an art form. And I become like kind of addicted to it in a way. Like I was recently in Puerto Vallarta and my two friends that I was with, and we went on a food tour, and there were like 10 people total on this food tour. So there were other people on the tour. I talked about this a little on the podcast, but so we'd go to a taco at this place and a taco at that place, and we'd go, it was really fun. And so we're sitting down having tacos like about halfway through, and I get to talking to one of the women on the tour. Her name's Cassie. And it turns out that she and her husband own a live music venue in Arkansas, and they do drag shows. And I'm like, drag shows in a red state? And I start getting a rush. Like, I have a million questions. Like, I really almost turn into I almost get it's almost like a pad appears in my hand. Like, I start to get a visceral rush of this is a story. I want to know about this. And it was almost like I was going to get a fix. I had to get my fix from her. And I remember sort of talking to her about what drag was like there. Did they meet with opposition? And it seemed like there was no political tint to it at all for her. Like she was just talking about, oh yeah, the girls will do a shablam, and then the next night we have a band in there. And I don't know, it was just really cool. But I felt like this thing ignited me, like this endorphin rush of there's a story here, or this is my beat. This is a drag in the red states. I gotta get the story. But I'm also trying to act like a normal person at a lunch. Sometimes I turn into an interviewer in social situations, I've noticed.
I think that there's probably two kinds of people, or you could divide the people in the world into two camps.
Yeah.
There's the people who are curious, and there are the people who aren't curious. And one's not better than the other. Or there are people who are perfectly happy and not curious and satisfied in their worlds. And there are people who just want to kind of break the world down a little bit more and pull back all those curtains, and they're not satisfied until they are.
I'm really that kind. And the other reason I do it is I interview a lot of creative people that I relate to, a lot of them gay people, who are not household names. They probably worked really hard on something that they may make a little money on, maybe no money, maybe it costs them money. I feel like it's meaningful that I see them and give them a chance to talk about their work in a way that is respectful, and I did my homework, and I feel because sometimes you have a project, and I met this guy, Mark S. King, last night. He was an author that I had on the podcast a few months ago. He wrote a book called My Fabulous Disease. He was doing a reading in West Hollywood, and I'd never met him face-to-face, but I'd read his writing for years, and I just like his writing. I think he's funny and smart, and I love the way his stuff just kind of lands. And he gave me a big hug last night, and he just complimented me on the podcast. He goes, I've done a lot of these things. And, and he's like, game knows game. And it was very sweet of him. But I felt like I did something nice for him for these artists that probably aren't making a lot of money or not getting a lot of reward. I like to be I see what you do. I find it valuable. I find it interesting. I want to know about this. I want to know about that. And I feel like for especially our generation of gay men doing creative things, I really tried to get those stories in a way. And it does feel like a calling in a way to me. And because I know what it's like to work really hard on something that maybe does okay, but doesn't change the game at all, but you did it and it's meaningful. And if somebody sees that and asks you about it, I think it's really meaningful. I can make their day, So that's part of why I do it too.
And some of these folks really do change the game. I loved your interview with Craig Chester.
Yeah.
I mean, the guy's like a legend in that era of queercore cinema.
Yeah.
It really changed film and changed
queer
people's
cinema
lives.
of the 90s. He was in a bunch of those movies. He was really a part of that movement. He was out from the beginning. He and I became friends, and he was very instrumental in getting me the job on the Big Gay Sketch Show, which I wrote for a season. He referred me for that, and it was great. And we worked together, and it was wonderful. And I had known that he was going through some stuff because he was pretty active on Facebook during a lot of it, and you could kind of follow it. I didn't catch every post or anything, but I just got a sense of like he's in a rough place dealing with addiction and stuff. And then I saw that, okay, it looks like he's getting better. And he posted that he was doing this Adam and Steve re-screening, like an anniversary screening. And I kind of was like, I guess I'm going to reach out to him and see, because I felt a little guilty because I hadn't talked to him in years, and I knew he'd been going through stuff. And I hadn't really, we'd kind of drifted apart or whatever, but I always was fond of him, and I think vice versa. So I was like, there was this thing of like, do I reach out? Yeah, I'm going to reach out. I just had this instinct to reach out. And it was a wonderful interview. And I think I was so honored that he was so open about what he'd been through. And I also felt proud that I gave my friend a platform to talk about this stuff, because I think a lot of people, if you'd seen him online, were curious, like what's going on there. And for him to be able to tell his story with so much heart and humor, and that I was the beneficiary of that, and that I was instrumental in bringing that out. That was really, sometimes I'll turn off the mics and I'll be like, wow, and that's really meaningful. Like I do this thing where I started a few years ago where I keep a gratitude list of 5 things I'm grateful for every day. I have it in my phone. And whenever I do a podcast, that's always up there because it's just meaningful. Like, I remember in 2016, for about a year around 2016, I was having real nervous system issues. I was really unwell. I would get tingles in my legs, but I kept this going. And when I was interviewing somebody, I didn't think about that stuff. I was in the moment, and it was an escape from what's going on in my body. And I remember vividly, I had worked on this show called Botched Post-Op, because the stress was from lack of work, fallout from the strike. I was part of the Fashion Police strike, and that really did a number on me in so many ways, but it was also a big catalyst for a lot of growth. But boy, it threw me for a loop for a number of years. Anyway, so I hadn't worked that much, but I got this job through my old boss, Lisa Bacon from Fashion Police, writing on this show, Botched Post-Op, which was a talk show where they talk about botched stuff. And it was fun. And the company was nice. And I did an interview with, I think his name's Doug Ross. And he's one of the founders of Evolution, that the production company that does this and Real Housewives. And, I went to his office, and meanwhile, I'm just a mess physiologically, like a mess. And I'm going to go over there, and we're going to do this podcast. And I'm a game, because I like working for this company. And it just felt like I was, I don't know, doing the kinds of things you do if you want to, keep working and get to know people. And, but I was also curious about what his career was like. And right before we rolled, he told me that Botched Post-Op wasn't coming back. So, and I could feel it going through my legs. And I was like, and then we did the interview. Yeah. So it was just one of those memories when I was really struggling, but I kept doing this, and I think it helped me. I didn't get super disciplined about every week until I joined forces with Derek and Romaine Studios a couple of years ago. And that got me on more of a schedule and stuff like that. But I kept it going, on some level from 2014 on. And if I was not having a good day or stressed out about something or whatever, if I got to do an interview, meeting that person, having that connection, feeling like I'm doing something meaningful, that was something that I would always be grateful for at the end of the day. And yeah, I can't believe I did it. I can't believe it's been 10 years. And yeah, it's wild.
Tell me about how Dennis Anyone came to be.
Well, I had worked on a radio show in 2005, 6, 7 called Radio with a Twist. And it was like American Top 40 for gay people. And there were 3 hosts. And it was, we ended up on Clear Channel. And it was really slick and cool. And I loved working on that show so much. And the other people. And we played music. And it would be like, and now here's number 4 on the Big Gay 7. It's Fergie and Glamorous. Like, it was like that. And we would introduce songs, and it was fun. We would get to be Casey Kasem. And I remember once we were playing "Oh Sheila" by, it's not Kool and the Gang, is it?
It's not DeBarge, is it?
No, it's like DeBarge, but it's somebody like that. And I was like, and here it is, "Oh Sheila," or as I like to say, "Oh Sheila." Anyways, just dumb stuff like that. But I got to be like radio DJ guy a little bit. And anyway, so after that ended, I was like, I like audio. I like this thing. And Tony, my roommate at the time, we liked to watch TV and talk, and we had good chemistry, and we were fun together. And we started a podcast called The Comedy Couch. And because that's what we used to call our couch. It was kind of a presumptuous thing now, like, we'll be the judge if it's a comedy couch or not. But that was what we always used to call our couch when we would have people over to watch. Come over we're going to watch the American Music Awards on the Comedy Couch. Like, that was the thing. So that's where the name came from. And then Tony ended up moving out, and we did a few more episodes after that, but it just became kind of like, oh, this isn't going to really sustain. But I liked the format, and I had the feed. So I was like, I love interviewing people. I really love it. So I'm going to do that. So I just switched it to Dennis Anyone. So if you go way back in the feed, there's all these Comedy Couch episodes, because I never switched the thing. It was the same thing. And then I sort of realized I didn't really quite know what it was at first. And then I think I sort of centered on, this is about creative people and how they do it, how they hang in. And my friend Alonzo Duraldi was the one that gave me the tagline. It's about making things up and making things happen. And I didn't quite know what it was at the beginning. And that's kind of what it evolved into.
Well, tell me about that first episode 10 years ago. Who was your first guest, and what was the biggest challenge to getting that episode going and up?
Well, I remember taking pictures for it, and my friend Danny Casillas, one of my dearest friends, shot the pictures, and I think we had lunch at like Hugo's or Joey's or Basics, God bless its soul, on Santa Monica Boulevard. And then we walked across the street, and there was construction going on. So there were those barricades that were like white barricades. And we sat up against one of those. And I had this idea that the microphones would be hanging down like dongs or something. And we shot these pictures, and I still use them today. They turned out really good. So I remember that was one of the steps. And one of the first person I got on the podcast was my friend Jackie Clark, who is a comedy writer and performer. We were actually on Radio with a Twist together. That's how I know her. She was on that show for a while. And now she's gone on to write on shows like Happy Endings, and she performs in the Mismatch Game. And I just remember going to her place in Pasadena or somewhere and setting up the microphones. And I think I had the observation deck questions, because when I used to do a lot of magazine journalism and interview celebrities, I had this list of random offbeat questions that I would pepper in. And I actually had it written out on a notebook piece of paper, and I Xeroxed a bunch of those pieces of paper. And I would take one to every interview and go, oh, that would be good for Tori Spelling or whatever, whoever it was. And I would pepper them in. So I think the idea of having these questions be part of the podcast was there from the beginning. I hand wrote them on these cards that are probably sitting here somewhere. And that's how the observation deck started. And I don't do it all the time now. Sometimes I'll do it because it's over Zoom. I used to have people pick it out in person before we started. Over Zoom, it's a little trickier, and sometimes I just forget. But that was always part of it at the beginning. And I just remember doing the interview at Jackie's house. She's somebody that's really funny. I don't know. I can't even remember what we talked about. Like maybe how she got into TV writing, how she was able to transition from performing to TV writing. And yeah, I'd have to go back and listen. But I think some of those earlier ones were kind of hangout podcasts more than like, what makes Jackie tick? Like, so Yeah, a lot of the earlier ones were friends of mine, people that I knew. And I remember one of the earliest ones was there's a writer named Rob Nolan that I worked with on Fashion Police. And so when the Fashion Police strike happened in 2013, it was maybe about a year later. He was one of the other first guests, and we kind of talked about that because that was such a seismic event in my life that I think I needed somebody to process it with in a public way. And so Rob agreed to do it, and that was one of the earlier episodes as well. Oh, gosh, I wonder what that would be like to listen to.
What do you think it would be like?
I think it would be... Oof, that thing was really consuming. If there was one event in my life that had more of an impact than anything else, I would say it was being part of that strike, leaving that job. My roommate was on the show, Tony, and he was the head writer, so I went on strike against my roommate. This happened on a Tuesday. He was out of the condo by Sunday. And I did a lot of ruminating about it. Like, I remember driving around thinking, what is Joan Rivers thinking? Like, trying to get in her brain, like, because she was the host and, what did she want? She wasn't really standing with us. And I just spent so much mental energy on that. And I don't think, I think it was a kind of trauma that was part of what I was dealing with in 2016, the fallout from that. Because for me, doing that, standing up for myself in that way was something I'd never done before. I felt like, I think I went against an internal rule, which was I was going to be a good boy and I wasn't going to upset people. That was how I was going to get through this world. And so by doing that, and then having it not go well or not being able to land on my feet afterwards, I felt like I was sort of being punished for breaking that rule. But the irony of the whole Fashion Police strike thing is that I stood up for myself for the first time. It went horribly. And now I stand up for myself more. Not all the time, but more. I'm much better than I used to be, which is an interesting takeaway from something that didn't go very well.
But ultimately may have gone well for you.
I would be a different person if that didn't happen. I would probably have more money. The condo you're sitting in right now might be paid off. But I would... all of the fallout from that is what led me to start learning about positive psychology and mindfulness and gratitude, and all of that stuff was born out of the wreckage of that. And that is a big part of my personality, and I find it very helpful and meaningful. And if that didn't happen, I don't know, I'd be different. I'd be very different. It's a big deal.
What makes a great Dennis Anyone guest? What qualities are you looking for in a guest?
I like people that haven't done a million interviews, that are happy to be there. Because, sometimes people are like, okay, the next one and whatever. I like people that have a sense of humor about themselves. And I like people that are willing to talk about the struggles of things. It's not a requirement, but I love when people go, can I be honest with you? I didn't make any money on that thing, or whatever it is. One of my favorite podcasts to listen to is Pivot with Scott Galloway and Kara Fisher. And Scott Galloway is a professor and a businessman. He's started a bunch of companies, and he's very smart and very rich. But occasionally he will just be brutally honest about something. And I always find myself leaning in. I always find myself really enriched. So I think something about the podcast format, like being really honest about things, I think is very powerful. And so I've tried to lean more into that. So I like guests that are willing to talk about the struggles, because I think that's something that people really relate to. I've decided, and this, you can quote me on this, it's hard to be a person. And
it is.
It's hard to be a person. And so I like when people are honest about their struggles and also the things that are meaningful to them and why they do it and why they love it and what's beautiful about it and things that they overcome. And I love those kinds of stories. So I think someone is a good Dennis Anyone guest if they're willing to be vulnerable, if they're happy to be there, if they don't wish it was over, and if they're fun, if they have a sense of humor. I like that too. Yeah.
How are the people you interview on the podcast different from the movie stars you interviewed back in your magazine days? Well,
a lot of them are really happy to be there because, like, I would interview, say I would be like, I remember this happened a lot. When I would write for Detour magazine, I would get the new starlet of the week, like Gwyneth Paltrow or Sandra Bullock or somebody, and they were awesome and I loved them, but they were new. And then they would blow up and then I would go back and get to do their cover story. And it was always great and it was always a thrill. But these people get interviewed a lot, and it's like, okay, what did we talk about last time? And they're afraid of getting burned. And like, it's, I got to do that at the heyday of magazines and I'm so grateful for that. It was the time to be doing that. But sometimes they're a little over it. You have to deal with publicists. I think with a lot of my guests, there's this moment where they go, oh, this is really, oh, you read the book or you saw the play. Like there's a little bit of a moment of like, oh, somebody cares. And I feel that sort of click and it's very gratifying. And I feel like the conversations that come out of that are really interesting.
A lot of authors are really blown away that you actually read the book.
I've gotten better at that than I used to. I mean, I always try, but lately, especially with audiobooks, you're able to sort of, because I'm able to, listen more and stuff like that. But then what's wonderful is when I start listening and then I'm like, I'm into it. And then I'm like, this is going to be a two-parter because like I'm really into it, And so, yeah, I like when, it's like I really want to get Christian Cooper on the podcast. He wrote a book about bird watching. He was the birder that was in Central Park that was, the Karen tried to call the cops on him. And he's written a wonderful book. It's a memoir, but it's also tied into what bird watching means to him and what people can learn from it. But also it talks about his father and all of this stuff. And I was listening to that going, oh, I really want to interview this guy. So the paperback's coming out soon. I'm going to figure out some way to, try to make that happen.
Sounds like a great interview.
It would be so fun. And he's like a comic guy, so you would like that.
I think he used to work at DC Comics. I think he worked for DC Comics at the time of the incident.
That may be true. Yeah, he's got that comic book thing, and he's got that superhero body, which, let's face it, is really important. Fans. Really important in a podcast.
You connect so well with other gay creatives. What is the world like for our people pursuing a creative path? You included, and has it changed much since you started the podcast?
Yes, I think so. I look at some of these gay guys in their 30s that are like killing it in pop culture, Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers and Joel Kim Booster, and they're getting like Netflix money. They're getting like Showtime money, and I'm so happy for them. And they're really good, and they deserve it, and they're super gay, and they talk about fucking, and it's like, it's really cool. I think when I was sort of coming up, there could be like one that got a show or something like that. Like it felt like it could happen, but when we were trying to shop when we were trying to shop Misadventures in the 213 as a show, even though the book came out before Will and Grace was already on, and it felt like, oh, we have that already. So I don't know if that's the only reason it didn't sell, but it just felt like there weren't as many slots or as many outlets or as many opportunities. And these guys now seem to really be crushing it. And I'm thrilled about it. I loved the Oscar season because there were so many out actors on the red carpet playing big roles and like wearing kind of fabulous clothes because they didn't have to worry about people thinking they were gay because guess what they are? So yeah, Coleman Domingo might wear a cape or a fur or like a boa. I don't know. So yeah, I think it has changed the landscape, for, people in the gay creatives in the business, but there's also like this loss too. Like There aren't gay magazines like there used to be. There's other things that sort of went away. Outfest is struggling. Like, I think I don't know. I guess things change, but there's things that are better, and then there's things that I kind of miss, you know.
I miss the local gay publications.
Frontiers.
Yeah.
Today,
Edge.
I just came from having Taco Tuesday with my friend Rick Angioli, who's a writer and does a lot of fun things and circus stuff. He was on the podcast, and I was talking to him about his circus thing, and he goes, well, I did a cover story for In Los Angeles about this new circus school that was opening up, and I just got hooked. And I'm like, in Los Angeles? Remember in Los Angeles? Mm. Oh, the best. Yeah, so I was just like, oh, remember those Frontiers, In Los Angeles, Edge, just magazines. It was it feels like a lifetime ago.
It really does, and it wasn't that long ago, but I remember being able to pick up one of those magazines, grabbing a pen, sitting down somewhere, and just circling books, plays, movies, and my social calendar was full for the next month.
Right, that's how you would plan what you were going to do. Well, you're such a good consumer of gay media generally, but you really support your fellow gay artists. So that's cool.
Okay, so hot topic time.
Oh, I love this.
There's a bit of a debate now about straight actors playing gay roles. A lot of gay people are tired of seeing straight actors do gay face and would rather see those opportunities go to gay actors who might be shut out of playing straight roles. Russell T. Davies talked in a 2021 New York Times interview about his commitment to cast gay actors in gay roles. Where do you stand?
Oh, I love this. I have some different perspectives on it. I remember I made a few short films, and I was involved in a feature film, Testosterone, that got made. And I just remember the casting process, more on my short films, where you didn't really know people's story when they came in. You just wanted them to be the guy you saw in your head, you know? And when they were, you're like, yes. And you're like, you hope they're gay. And the truth is, in my short film, Rub Down, the guy that played the lead, Jamie Fouth, the reason I cast him is he said this one line in this sort of gay way that made me laugh out loud. And so it was a kind of like, I don't need to know, but that, yes, you know? I think you should try to find gay actors to play gay parts. I think it's better generally. But then I think of certain performances that straight guys did of gay men that I wouldn't want to do without, you know? Here's the thing. I don't think you could be a straight actor and play a gay character and not be good. I think if you do it, and I think for the filmmaker or the creatives around that, where you're like, oh, fuck, we cast that guy because he's a name and he sucks. Like, that's the worst. That would be the worst.
Or when the straight actor gets on set and refuses to do the kiss,
right? Which
we've heard about.
We've had that happen in different projects, and that's really annoying. So yeah, I've seen that story or heard of those incidents. Yeah, but I think it's, you know, you can kind of tell. You know, I look back on, like, what was that movie, Supernova, with Colin Firth and Stanley Tucci? Great actors. Not buying it. Not buying it. Don't need it. Don't want it. It felt a little like, not anymore. We're not buying this anymore. Do you know what I mean? I felt like they thought they were going to get in under the wire, but they did it. I don't know. But then somebody like Paul Mescal in All of Us Strangers, I don't know his story, but he was wonderful in that movie. And but I love seeing people like Andrew Scott. Like, his performance in that movie was so deeply felt, and I think much of it is his talent, but much of it is that he's gay and knows that terrain, you know?
Sometimes it does feel like not anymore. Like, thank you, Jake Gyllenhaal, for getting us here.
Yeah.
But we've got Matt Bomer. We've got Joel Kim Booster now.
Yeah.
You've done your job.
Yeah.
Thank you. But
I don't think I'd want to watch Brokeback Mountain with two straight actors if it were made today.
Because we've seen Fellow Travelers, and we've seen what two gay actors can bring to this. There's a different kind of fire that they can bring. Yeah.
And if you're not going to do that, you better be really sure that that person better have something special. Because I do think that an artist's passion should count for a lot. Like if I want that straight guy. That's the guy. Yeah, but he's not straight. But no, but I know it is. I think you should give artists a little bit of leeway to do that stuff. But boy, if you blow it, it sucks, right? Like think of some of those performances like in the 90s and 2000s of like even like James Corden in The Prom is a bit cringe, but maybe it's just because he's not my favorite. But you know, it's like a little like.
So why was James Corden not okay and Eric Stonestreet was okay for doing the same thing?
It's kind of the same thing, but also his stuff doesn't age that well. If you go back and look at it, you know, I don't know. It was very similar, right? It was very similar. Yeah, interesting. But you know, I used to write for The Advocate and Out, and I would interview straight actors that were in gay projects, or you didn't know their story, and you had to figure out what can you ask or can you not ask, and it was always like a minefield, and like all of those articles, and you know, the hot guy on the cover, and anyway, it was a time. So
it was a time.
The idea that like gay actors are playing gay roles in big projects and they're out in the press, that's kind of cool because there's a lot less like mumbo jumbo around it, which is, I think, is a relief because then you can focus on the project and the you know, and the outfits, frankly, and the hair, and the bodies.
Yeah, there's a lot of nice people out there.
Yes,
but you're so much more than nice. You're profoundly kind.
What?
Where does that come from? Is it your Mormon background, or was it just a conscious decision you made at some point?
Wow. I think I picked it. I think it has to do a little bit with the way I was grown up, the way I grew up. I've been doing a bit of work around this for myself, and I may have talked about this before. I think it comes up a lot for me, and maybe I've thought about it so much that I've put it on everything, and maybe it doesn't even apply. But I was born 8 years after a clump of 5 kids, so I was an accident baby, and my mom rallied and loved me, and I always felt cared for and loved by her. But my father was not interested in me. And I felt like kind of a trespasser in my house a little bit, subconsciously. And I think because of that, I felt like my place in the world was not certain. Like there might not be a place. Like I'm maybe not supposed to be here. Like there's nothing meant for me. So I have to work hard. I have to be nice. I have to not upset anybody. And I have to, you know, kind of follow my own creative thing. Like, and that's kind of how I've moved through the world. But I think the nice thing is a part of that, I think. Or maybe I don't know. I just like nice people. I don't know. I feel like it's the way to be. I don't know. And I don't like upsetting anybody. Like for a long time, that was like the invisible number one on my to-do list. Don't upset anybody. And I don't think that's a positive thing. I think it's a mixed bag because there are times when you need to stand up and you need to push back. And I acquiesce a lot in my younger days. Less so now, but still. I don't know. I heard a thing recently that makes me feel good, which is like somebody said that the kindest person in the room is probably the smartest, which I thought was interesting. And they had a reason for it. Like they expounded on that. And I like that notion. Not that I'm the smartest person in any room or the nicest or anything, but that smart and nice go together. I like that idea. I don't know. I think it's, I think it makes me happy to be nice. It makes me feel good. You know, I think in the last few years, I have always have all these woo-woo things, but I've decided that everyone's awesome. And so if there's somebody on the street or somebody comes up to me and asks for something, or can you give directions? I am like, oh, they're awesome. I'm going to help them. Like, instead of like, oh, they're scary, they're dangerous, I've just decided that everyone's awesome, and I try to behave accordingly. And I have not been burned yet, and I've had some really nice interactions. And these pleasures are meaningful when you feel like you're not getting enough from the world. You know, I'm not making enough money. I don't have a partner. Like I can go down the list of things. But, you know, I had a really fun interaction with Kira at Noah's Bagels or whatever, you know? And they count. They give you a little boost, a dopamine boost or whatever. And, yeah, I don't know. It's important to me. It is. And I appreciate that you see that, because I don't know. I hope that's true, but I don't know if it's that pronounced.
You make it look easy.
Really? Thank you. That's very sweet. Wow, this is quite an anniversary issue episode. Yeah, I don't know. I think it matters.
It matters.
I think, yeah, I mean, sometimes when I see people being difficult, like in work situations, or you hear of diva stories, I think, how smoothly must their road have been? Like, I feel like, I don't know, hadn't that stuff gotten knocked out of you yet from the ups and downs of it all? That's what I think sometimes when I see somebody being difficult. I think, it must have, I don't know. I don't know. It feels like they might have, they don't really appreciate where they're at, possibly. I don't know. I think about that sometimes.
And being a creative person can be emotionally draining.
Yeah.
Especially when it's your profession. How do you take care of yourself and stay motivated to keep putting yourself out there in the way that you do?
Wow. Well, I try to meditate. I'm hit and miss with it, but I have 2 meditation crushes that keep me going. I have 2. They're both foreign. One's Canadian, named Jeff Warren, and he's like really cute, and I like his vibe, and so I'll do some of his guided meditations. And then there's a French guy named Jonathan Lehman, who is dreamy, and he has guided meditations that I sometimes do. I think it sort of helps me. That's one thing. You know, I'm at an interesting time now where I'm not entirely sure how I'm making a living. I'm also really creatively fired up. Like, I'm not done. I'm not ready to like pack it all in and go sit on a Shea lounge somewhere. I'm not. But I'm also like looking around going, well, where are things happening? Who's working? Are they making these kinds of things? Like, I'm not quite sure what to do, but I'm still fired up about it. And I still have ideas. I still feel really creative. And I feel like in terms of the podcast and stuff, I'm really cooking with, like, you know, the interviews. So I don't know. I don't know what else. I think, you know, the podcast takes a fair amount of energy, and I don't make much money from it. And you can have it when you pry it from my cold, dead fingers. Like, it does something for me very meaningful, and I'm very proud of it. But it's like feeds my soul in a way. Like, I talk about my gratitude list. You know, like, I will edit a podcast on a Monday night, and I'll be like, "Wow, that was cool. I got to talk to that person," and I'm enriched by it, even listening back to it. And I was like, okay. And I love doing the graphic part. You know what part I don't like? I don't like writing the synopsises. Turns out I don't like writing. Turns out, here's newsflash, plot twist. No, I love doing the graphic design for the thing, but I don't love writing the synopsis. I mean, it's fine, but it's like, the last thing I do. And maybe there's AI that can do that. Feels like maybe they could. Well, they need to know what we talked about.
Yeah, I think if you could get a transcript of the podcast, then you could get AI to boil it down to a synopsis.
Yeah.
And then it'll have a lot of mistakes in it.
Yeah, it probably just won't have that punch. The typos that I so lovingly render. Like, and often you can tell that I do it late at night because the synopsis is kind of I look at it the next day and I'm like, whoa, there are a lot of mistakes in there. There's a few repeated words and this and that. But I I love it. It's very meaningful to me, and I'm trying to think about why it is. I feel like, I love to interview people, and a few years ago I got to interview Katy Perry, and just before that time, I had been talking with my friend Tom in New York, and he was particularly inspired by her song Firework, and I think it helped him get through a tough time or something, and he told me about that. And so when I interviewed Katy Perry, I said, I really like that song Firework. In fact, a friend of mine said it really helped him get through a tough time. And she said, I feel like I'm doing the right thing when I'm singing that song. And that's how I feel about interviewing people. I feel like I'm doing the right thing. Like I'm doing the thing I'm supposed to be doing. And here's what I find is it doesn't matter the setting really. Like I've done some EPK type interviews, which are more like they're shorter, they're not hard hitting, but I still get the same rush from the process of asking them something and seeing what they say, and then maybe following up, or, I'm going to try to say a funny thing here. There's something really funny. In the most recent episode, or 2 podcasts ago, I interviewed these filmmakers of the movie Transition, this documentary, which is a great documentary. And I was like, I want to tell them that it reminded me of Tootsie because it's somebody pretending to be a different gender identity than they really are in order to do a job. And I did say that, but I don't think either one of them had heard it. But it feels like a gambit. Like, I'm going to say the Tootsie thing and see how it goes. Like, I like you get a little rush when you send in that fishing line that gets the right thing. It's like I feel like it's an art form and I get a little rush from it. Yeah. And, once in a while it doesn't go that well, but, yeah, I get I don't know. What am I trying to say? It's kind of my happy place. When I'm interviewing somebody, I'm in a good place. All right, we're going to stop there for part 1 of my 10th anniversary episodes, where I'm getting interviewed by Robert Chandler. Thank you to Robert again for doing it, and we've got a lot more to come in part 2. So this happened. I got to see the play Fat Ham at the Geffen Playhouse in Los Angeles. And it was on my radar for a while. I won the Pulitzer and was a big hit on Broadway, and I had read about it. So it was on my dream board, of course, and I got to go because of the press night. I got to go for free, which was nice. And it's just deliriously entertaining. It is so smart. It's so funny. It's outrageous. Just a laugh a minute, but it's just got this soul to it and this heart. And there's one line that I've been thinking about ever since I saw the show, and one of the characters says it at one point, which is, what would the world be like if we chose pleasure over harm? Something to that effect, pleasure over harm. And I've just been thinking about that ever since then. It's not like altruistic goodness, it's pleasure, selfish, but still it's better than harm. And what would that world be like? And I just thought it just really landed and stuck with me. So if you're in LA and you get a chance, go see Fat Ham. It's a knockout. And I think they do rush tickets through the Today Tix app. I signed up for those and I occasionally get notifications. So I might go see it again. All right, that's enough for this week. We've got part 2 coming up next week. I want to give a shout out to Oscar Rosario for mixing the episodes. My theme music is by Mark Daniels for Placement Music. We'll catch you next time on Dennis Anyone. Bye!